6 true stories of terrifying experiences in dark abandoned schools. There's something haunting about schools after dark. The silence, the long, empty hallways, the echoes of children's laughter that once filled the air, now replaced by whispers that don't belong to the living. Some buildings were never meant to stay open. Some memories were never meant to fade. And some schools refuse to be forgotten. These are 6 true stories of people who dared to step inside abandoned schools, only to wish they never had. Story 1. The locker that screamed. Jake and his friends loved exploring urban ruins. One night, they entered an old school just outside of Chicago, condemned for over a decade. The building was crumbling, ceilings sagging, and graffiti covered every wall. In the gymnasium, they found rows of old lockers, rusted and still closed. One friend, Tyler, joked about a body being inside. He kicked one open. What they heard was not a creak. It was a scream. A long, piercing human scream, coming from the locker. They ran. But Jake swore that as he looked back, one locker door slowly opened, and a pale hand began to reach out. The school was bulldozed months later. But some say, if you stand where it once was, you can still hear metal slamming shut, and the muffled scream of something still trapped. Story 2. The Basement Bell. Maria was a night custodian at an old school in Pennsylvania, one that had been partially shut down due to budget cuts. Her job was simple: clean the main floor. She was told never to go into the basement. One night, curious and tired of hearing strange sounds, she descended the stairs. It was freezing. The lights flickered, barely illuminating old desks, broken chalkboards, and dust-coated toys. Then she heard it, a bell ringing. But there were no classrooms left down there, no students, no teachers. As she turned a corner, she saw a figure at the end of the hall. A child, standing completely still. When she blinked, the figure was gone. But the bell kept ringing, louder, closer, until it stopped, right behind her. Maria quit the next day. She never went back, and to this day, no one knows where that bell came from. Story 3. Room 17. In a town outside of Detroit, there's an abandoned elementary school that locals warn tourists not to enter, especially not Room 17. But 2 amateur ghost hunters ignored the warnings. They set up cameras, EVP recorders, and waited. At 1:12 a.m., one of them whispered, "Do you feel that?" and pointed to the door. It was slowly opening. No wind, no movement around. Their static monitor showed a shadow crossing the room, but to the naked eye, nothing was there. Then came the knocking, 3 knocks on the wall, then again, and again, until the plaster cracked. They ran. When they checked the footage later, every camera turned to face Room 17, on its own. And in the background, a voice was caught whispering, "Stay." Story 4. The Chalkboard Message. A woman named Leah visited her mother's abandoned high school, set to be demolished within the week. She wandered through empty corridors, memories flooding back. She entered her old math classroom and gasped. On the chalkboard, written freshly in white chalk, were the words, "Welcome back, Leah." She turned around. No one. The air smelled like chalk and something foul. She ran. But later, when she told demolition workers about it, they laughed. There hadn't been chalkboards in that school for over 10 years. Everything had been whiteboards since the early 2000s. When the crew went to inspect, they found the message was gone. But deep scratch marks were found in the wall behind where the board used to be, like fingernails, trying to write. Story 5. The Man in the Hall. A teacher's assistant named David once worked the night shift at a school that had closed its doors permanently but hadn't yet been sold. His job was simple: check lights, patrol halls, and log any damage. But one night, while walking past the auditorium, he saw a man standing at the far end of the hallway, tall, wearing a suit, motionless. David called out. No response. He moved, closer, but the figure didn't move. Then suddenly all the hallway lights blew out at once. In the flicker of the emergency light, the figure was suddenly inches away. David fell backward. The figure vanished. The next morning, security footage showed David, but no one else. Yet he swears, something was there, and it wanted me to follow. Story 6. The Class That Never Left. A security team was sent to inspect an abandoned middle school before its sale. The group split up to cover more ground. One of them, Anthony, heard children laughing from the top floor. He followed the sound. Upstairs, he found an old classroom. Desks neatly arranged, books open. The chalkboard had lessons written out as if class had just ended, and then the temperature dropped. He looked around. Nothing. But when he turned to leave, every desk chair was pulled out. At the same time. And from the back of the class, a girl's voice asked, "Will you be our teacher now?" He ran, never returned. His co-workers never heard the voice. But Anthony says it follows him, even now in his dreams. Abandoned schools should be silent. But what if some lessons never ended? What if some students never left? So tell me, would you walk through the halls of your old school if it stood silent and rotting in the dark? Would you go back, knowing something might still be waiting in the classrooms, or worse? What if it remembers you?